Good morning, good afternoon. All right, let's try that again, shall we? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are, whenever it is for you. I'm Peter Alexievich, and this is the Live at 5 from Ukraine. Today is August 25th. There's the truth unknown. How you doing, truth? Today is August 25th, day 548 of Vladimir Putin's heinous and barbaric war against Ukraine. And I'm just taking a look here real quick. Andrew is here. Davis is here. Good afternoon, Cheyenne. How you doing, Cheyenne? Truth Unknown is here. How you doing, Truth? Lars, hey Lars. Lars, I'll have to look at that other thing because they took down the original post. Hey Kirby, hey Cynthia. Hey guys, how's everybody doing today? Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome, and non-binary folks, welcome. Let's take a look at the top line news stories today. General Mark Milley has confirmed that Ukraine has broken through the Russian defensive lines. Now, this is what's happening down around just north of Tokmak. The Ukrainians have pushed through Robatny. They pushed through the first Russian defensive line. And when I say defensive lines, I'm not talking about the contact line. I'm not talking about the front line. I'm talking about the defensive fortifications, the rows of dragon's teeth, the tank trenches, the actual rows of trenches, the barbed wire, the minefields. They're through that crap. They've opened up the line and they are pouring through with tanks, men, and munitions even as we speak. The Ukrainian MOD has yet to confirm it, but Novopropokivna, just south of Robatny, appears to have been liberated at this point. We saw yesterday the settlement hit with JDAMs, drones, and HIMARS. We saw fighting around the outskirts of the village yesterday, and today it looks like the Ukrainians are now just in mopping up operations. And so Novopropivka has, I believe, or it will be confirmed shortly that it's been liberated. And this is huge news, guys. This is huge news because if you look at a map, you'll see just 15 kilometers south of there is the town of Tokmak. The drone operators now are saying that they've got Tokmak in their sights. This is critical. Look at Tokmak on a map. You will see roads radiating out of Tokmak because it's the logistics hub. Everything goes through there. Without Tokmak, the Russians can't be resupplied, and you cannot fight a war without ammunition and food. It is just that simple. And so things are looking good in the southern front. The Russian army should wither and fail, fall apart without their resupply lines. There are already on the Telegram channels, the Telegram channels for the Russian army in southern Ukraine are lit up complaining that there is no counter battery fire support. There is no ammunition. They are out of reinforcements. Things are looking very positive down on the southern front. Don't let any Russian disinformation dissuade you from that. Hey guys, do me a favor. Would you hit the like button? Hit like, hit like till your fingers bleed. Let's bring some more people in here. You guys are the best. Thank you all so much. Okay, now dig this. Here's how we know it's serious. Here's how we know. Because the FSB is pulling out of Tokmak, right? The Russian Secret Service, the inheritor of the KGB, has closed their offices, burned their records, and has pulled out of Tokmak. Further to that, there was a huge missile strike on the army base in Tokmak that is said to have wiped the base from the face of the earth. Tokmak is in their sights. I saw a video of a drone operator just around Novopropivka today he could see Tokmak from where he was. The Ukrainians have Tokmak in their sights. Now, dig this. 2 days ago, Ukrainian missiles took out, I believe it was an S-200 modified missile, took out an S-400 anti-missile system in Crimea. The next day, yesterday, was an absolutely biblical landing in Crimea. There was an insertion of special forces. They came in on those rubber boats. I forget what those rubber boats are called. I know what they're called, but you know the kind I mean, right? The rubber boats with the little motors. They came in on those rubber boats, these special forces teams that had apparently been trained by the British. They took the Russians completely by surprise. Completely by surprise. They they not only took out all the Russians that were there on the base, who they literally caught with their pants down, if you saw my other video. They also raised the Ukrainian flag on Crimean soil. They took out two radar installations, right? Anti-aircraft radar installations. And then they got out of there with reportedly no casualties. Nobody was lost on the Ukrainian side in that raid. So, first the anti aircraft missile systems, then the radar systems. And then today, the biggest drone strike in the course of this war. According to the Russian MOD, 73 Ukrainian drones hit Semerapol and Sevastopol. The Russians say that they took them all out. This is nonsense because we have video online that Sevastopol is burning. That, of course, is where the Black Sea Fleet is. This is all good news. Good news. Okay. The RDK, the so called Russian Freedom Corps, they're the Russians that have been attacking Belgorod with Ukrainian support. Now, look, these guys are no friends of democracy, right? There's real questions about these people, but the enemy of my enemy is my friend sometimes. But it goes to the point that these guys are a concern because today they posted video inviting the Wagnerites to join them, which I'm sorry, but come on. Anybody that would have the Wagner in their coterie is a are people to be afraid of and concerned about. But they did it. They put a video online. They invited Wagner to join them. And dig this, they said, "Join us and we will attack Moscow and get revenge for Prigozhin." Now, what did I say last night? I said that last night Putin is multiplying the problems that he has for himself. First, he's got some opposition in Russia as it is. Quiet, under the radar, but definitely they're there because we know that some of these drone strikes on these air bases have been led by partisans. We know that those partisans who are friends of Ukraine raised the Ukrainian flag in front of the FSB office in Novgorod last week, right? Which was a thing of beauty. I just love that. Guys, thank you for the hearts. Thank you for the uh, gifts. I appreciate every gift because I am totally broke right now. I was supposed to have 2 days of work this week, and both of those days got canceled. And so, actually, I should mention tonight's live is brought to you by Ricky Baldo and Igor Falls, who paid for my phone bill and bought me groceries this week. Thank you, gentlemen. I really appreciate you both. So every little bit helps. I really appreciate it, guys. Thank you. Uh, I'm an idiot. I know I am. Okay, now look at on the subject of Wagner, Prigozhin shows that Putin is desperate. He's got internal partisans who are bombing Moscow, sending drones into Moscow. Yeehaw! Anybody gives me a hat, I'll give you a good old American yeehaw. How about that? uh, he's got partisans inside the country who are burning the Soviet bombers, the Tu 22s. Then now he's just made enemies of the far right military blogosphere, the people that he depended on to push the vicious agenda of this war are now thinking about turning their sights on Moscow. Nothing could make me happier, frankly. And so he is making mistakes, and they will be his undoing. He used to irregularly take out his competition, right? Today, he's taken out his competition every single week. The only reason this guy's conscience is clean is because it's never been used. The Pentagon and the MI6 today confirmed that they do not believe that an anti aircraft missile hit Prigozhin's plane. It is the opinion of the Pentagon and MI6 that it was sabotage with an onboard bomb. Now, dig it. The Russian telegram channels are lit up with conspiracy theories on this point. The Russian telegram channels are suggesting that the CIA is behind it, because the CIA is behind everything, right? The CIA orchestrated the coup in Ukraine in 2014. The CIA took out the Soviet Union. The CIA is behind everything. So the CIA took out Prigozhin as well. The Russian media, when they mention Prigozhin at all, which they are not hardly doing, my friends, it's amazing. You'd think it's be the biggest news story in Russia today, and there's hardly a whisper of it. But when the official media channels mention Prigozhin, they blame his death on the Ukrainians, which is a very stupid thing to do, because you're saying that you live in a country where your enemy can get sabotage groups inside to take out a strike force to take out a plane. That's not a message you want to send, I don't think. But clearly there are Ukrainian strike groups operating in Russia. So Ukraine has denied all involvement, however, and I believe Zelensky when he says it. So dig this. This is the story. This is the conspiracy theory that the Telegram channels are telling themselves. Apparently, a few days before the plane took off, hey, Feisty, thanks, Feisty. A few days before the plane took off, it got a new refrigerator. This refrigerator, they are saying, is where the bomb was placed. The bomb was built into the refrigerator, and it was an American refrigerator in a Canadian plane. Therefore, it must be the CIA. This is Russian logic at its best. The Kremlin has rejected all claims that they had anything to do with the death of Prigozhin. To quote the Kremlin spokesperson, it's an absolute lie to suggest such a thing. Belarus denies that Wagner is leaving Belarus. Now, this is a funny claim to make, given that we have satellite pictures of the Wagner bases being deconstructed, right? They're being torn down. And according to Andriy Demchevko, who is part of Russia's state border guards, he's the spokesperson for Russia's state border guards. He reports that many Wagners have crossed the border back into Russia. Now, we don't know why, right? Are they headed to Moscow for revenge? Are they headed to join up with the RDK? Are they headed back to serve as Putin's lapdogs once again? We don't know. We do not know. Ryan Macbeth, who, if you don't know who he is, he's an American infantryman who has fascinating insights. And he brought up the most interesting angle on all of this that I've heard to date. Wagner was recently incorporated as a limited liability corporation inside of Belarus. According to Belarusian law, When the owner of such a corporation dies, it's the wife that inherits the corporation. And so Ryan Macbeth asked the question, who has legal ownership of the Wagner Group? And that's a really interesting question to ask. I thought anyway. Okay, let's take a look at military pledges today. The whole world stands with Ukraine, and nothing could be more telling of that than support from Ireland. Ireland is a tricky country, guys. My mother is Irish, she's a Monaghan, and we know the history of Ireland with Britain, the long time of the Troubles. And because Ireland is has historically been an enemy of Britain, they have mostly been neutral through most of the 20th century and the 21st century. That all changed today when the Republic of Ireland agreed to provide arms training for Ukrainian soldiery. And so even neutral Ireland has come into the fight on the side of Ukraine. And as a person who enjoys some Irish extraction, in fact, on my way to Warsaw, I stopped in Ireland and became the first person in my family in 6 generations to set foot in Ireland. I really welcome their support of the coalition, and I think we all should. Finally, the US has joined the F-16 coalition. It's about freaking time, isn't it? I mean, come on, Washington, D.C. Everybody else, Norway pledged F-16s before the US did, um, as has the Netherlands and Denmark, right? So the Scandinavians are really coming through. I've got some more stuff here on the Scandinavians. Finland just declared a $101.5 million aid package to Ukraine. The details of that were not disclosed. Norway came through with another 140 million today for energy infrastructure, in addition to the F-16s that they pledged this week and the IRIS-T systems, anti-aircraft missile systems, or pardon me, air defense systems. Sweden Sweden's leading political party wants to send JAS 39 Saab aircraft, the Griffins. And we know that there's already 70 Ukrainians in Sweden training on the Griffins, including pilots, flight crew, and mechanics. So that's great. And on the subject of Sweden and some business news, the ruble is not faring as well today. It's lost value again. It's up to 95.5 to 1 US dollar. So the price control or the inflationary controls that were put in place to prop up the currency appear to already be eroding, uh, as we knew they would. And other business news: Sweden's H&M will reopen here in Ukraine in November in time for the holiday season. Heineken, finally, Heineken has gotten its ass out of Russia. Now, whether or not this was spurred on by the recent nationalization of Carlsberg beer, right, or Jarlsberg beer, um, Putin apparently is paying off the oligarchs for their support by nationalizing Western companies, just taking over Western companies and handing them to his buddies, which he did with Danone yogurt or Dannon yogurt in the US and Jarlsberg beer just recently. Today, Heineken, get this, Heineken sold all of its Russian operations to a Russian company for €1. They're out. Good for Heineken. I'll have a Heineken this weekend. The Greeks. Now, this is really interesting. Now, we know that Zelensky just met with the Greek prime minister, right? The Greeks have discontinued their maintenance contracts for their Russian Tor M1 and OSA AKM or OSA anti missile systems. air defense systems. They've got 21 Tors and 38 of the OSAs. Now, they haven't said that they're giving any of them to Ukraine, but they've discontinued the maintenance contract with Russia. Just another example of another sanction against the Russian Federation. So good for the Greeks. Um, now this is amazing to me. Erdogan in Turkey, his son-in-law runs uh, Baykar, the people who make the Bayraktar drones. Yesterday, for Ukrainian Independence Day, Baykar handed the GUR here in Ukraine this awesome Bayraktar drone, right? And these are tens of thousands of dollars, these things. That brings the total gifts and discounts that Baykar has given to the Ukrainian people up to $100 million, more than some NATO countries have given from one company, and a Turkish company at that. So kudos to the folks over at Baykar. Yesterday, now last week we saw in Moscow and Petersburg 400 migrants at least rounded up and forced into service, forcibly conscripted, just rounded up, put into vans, taken to this conscription office, and sent to the front. The Russians are at it again in the southern Urals, in the town of Chelbinsk, or in the district of Chelbinsk. Um, the recruiters went into a Chinese market and just rounded up every male of age and force conscripted them. So the Russians are desperate. It's not the Ukrainians that are desperate, guys. I mean, yes, the Ukrainians want this thing over. Of course they do, because they're the ones bleeding. But this kind of thing, I mean, who's gonna go to Russia for work now if you can be picked up on the street, put in a uniform, and sent to the front? Whether or not you get handed a gun is still a question. In the last 24 hours, one person was killed and 10 were injured, including one child, in Russian shelling of Ukrainian towns and villages. Um, Now, I've talked a lot about the Ukrainian ingenuity and the S-200 missile program. Now, we know that in 2013, the Ukrainians decommissioned their S-200 missile program. It appears that they have reopened those vaults where those were stored, and they have retrofitted them for surface to surface action. And today, an S-200 missile came down at the air base in Kaluga Oblast, which is just south of Moscow, southeast of Moscow, 400 kilometers from the nearest Ukrainian border. So, the very outer range of what these missiles are supposed to be capable of. What's at that Kaluga air base? More Tu-22s, the backfire bombers that deliver cruise missiles and to Ukrainian civilians every day. Let me tell you something. We had 5 air alerts here in Kyiv today. The Russians are unhappy, and they are letting it be known, boy. That sparked an air alert along with a couple of drones that struck Moscow today, closing all the airports, which is great because I had to take a bus from Warsaw for 23 hours with no toilet to get to Kyiv. So good that the Russians don't have air traffic either, or don't have air travel either, are being denied the basic realities of modern society. Okay, you guys are the best. That is the top line news update for the day. I am happy to talk about anything that anybody wants to talk about at this juncture. I really would ask all of you, because I recognize so many of you here. We've had one on one interactions in chats and texts and emails and different things. Um, certainly Lars and Cheyenne and Feisty and Joe and Truth Unknown and oh, Magic is here. Hey, Magic. Um, so many of you guys. You guys are the core. And I'll tell you, I really need your help with something. If there's any way that you guys can help prom Ooh, what the hell was that? If there's any way that you guys can help promote this channel and help promote me, that would be great. If you can share the videos, do stitches, do duets, or friend me on Facebook. If you're more a Facebook person, friend me on Facebook and share my stuff on Facebook. Um, that would be great. I would really appreciate it. And all the gifts and all the help and all the support that I get from all of you is great. No war in Ukraine. Proof is in the pictures. Right. There's no war here. There's no war here. It's all just a hoax. It's all just a hoax so the Biden crime family can launder money. Right? Right. Right. I don't worry about the trolls because Cheyenne will kick them right out. I know you're on top of it. Okay, questions, comments, points of observation, or personal need. Thank you, little red sunflower. I sure do appreciate it. Trump was arrested. He was booked. I'll tell you, I got a little flutter of joy today um, when I saw a headline that said Trump leaves Atlanta prison on bail. If Putin and Trump die in jail, all my faith in humanity and democracy will be restored, my friends. Now, Magic, what about the big drone attack that's supposed to happen tomorrow? Dude, that was supposed to happen yesterday. Remember that teaser trailer that I put out there that the Russian MOD had put out? It had a date of August 24th on it. Now, there was a huge or huge drone attack on Sevastopol today, but not. Uh, thanks, Scotty, but not. But not on Moscow. Not on Moscow. So I don't know, man. It's a there's a big disinformation war going on here. And the Ukrainians play it as well as the Russians. They really do. It's amazing. Yeah, that's just a coincidence, Prigozhin and Trump. That's a coincidence. That date for surrender was set by the court. I think that it's more telling that Prigozhin's plane went down to the day on the 2-month anniversary of the mutiny. That screams Putin. He loves those magic dates, boy. He's got a thing for dates. I saw there was another question that I wanted to address. I apologize. Uh, big drone attack. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. Will Germans send the Taurus missiles? So here's the latest on the Taurus missiles. The far right group in uh, the far right group in the the German parliament, and the far right group in the German parliament is holding it up. It appears to be the case now. So they have objected to the whole thing, and the whole thing's had to go back to some kind of committee, or they're in talks, or whatever it happens to be. I'm not sure how the German parliament works. Putin wants to dominate the dollar, but the ruble is down again today. It's back down to 95.5 to 1 US dollar. Hope you give some info about the Ukrainian attack on Crimea. So we did real quick. It looks like it was a 3-day process. First, 2 days ago, they took out the S-400 air defense system. Then yesterday was that dramatic beach landing where they took out the radar emplacements. And then today, the biggest drone attack in the history of this war. 73 drones, according to the Russian MOD, all of which are supposed to have been knocked down. But Sevastopol and Simferopol are on fire. Okay, now that's a great question, Jay, right? So Jeff says, how far south does Ukraine need to be in order to hit the highway that Russia is using to resupply? Now, dig it, bro. There's 5 roads and bridges that come out of Tokmak. Of the 5 roads and bridges that come out of Tokmak, and this is important because Ukrainian roads are for shit. You got to have highways in this town, in this country. If you want to move heavy equipment and machinery and heavy trucks, you need the highways. The side roads will not cut it, especially not after a little bit of rain, boy. Forget it. The highways coming out of Tokmak, currently, one of them is cut off, another one is under fire control, and a third is soon to be under fire control. Tokmak itself is soon to be in artillery range. Um, Tokmak itself is soon to be in artillery range. If I'm right, and I have every reason to believe that I am, because when you look at the Russian telegram channels and you look at the chatter about where the Russians are calling for counter battery fire and airstrikes, it's south of Novopropivka already. I think tomorrow we'll have news from the Ukrainian MOD that Novopropivka has been liberated. That's my firm belief. Now, of course, the Russians could get reinforcements in there. Entirely possible. That's what they did in Tokmak, or I'm sorry, in Klivshivska. It's what they did in Orozhany. They just sent wave after wave of reinforcements in. Um, tough, tough to say what's going to happen there, as always with this. But I am very hopeful. I am very, very hopeful that in the near term, Tokmak is going to be in the sights of Ukrainian artillery, and those supply roads will be cut. Now, that will leave one road, even with taking Tokmak, right, Jeff? Even with taking Tokmak, that will leave one road. That's the road that travels along the coast from Mariupol down to Bryansk, all the way down to Crimea. To get fire control over that, they're going to have to go another 15 kilometers, 15, 20 kilometers south of Tokmak. But here's the thing. Once they're at Tokmak, they've got control of the highways. Once they're at Tokmak, there's no more defensive lines between them and that road. The Russian defenses behind the defensive lines are hollowed out. They don't exist. If the Russians can secure their gains and consolidate that advance through Robatny, through those defensive lines, they're right now, as we speak, the Bradleys are going in there with their night vision and they're cutting up the second line of defensive fortifications. The second line of defensive fortifications. Beyond that, it appears there's no more minefields. Beyond that, the defensive fortifications exist around Tokmak. But you bring Tokmak under siege, traffic stops. resupply stops, and you cannot fight a war without ammunition. It is just that simple. Good question, Jeff. What else? They're making good progress splitting the Russians right now. Maybe altogether you're looking at about uh, 30 to 35 kilometers. Now, again, that sounds like a lot when you think that it took them 2.5 months to go 16 kilometers. But that was through minefields, dragon's teeth, barbed wire, entrenched fortifications. Those are done. Once they get through this line to Tokmak, those are basically done. Do you believe that they will be safe going down without good air defense? No, of course. Right now, guys, I do want to point out that I am not a military person. My understanding of the tactics that are being employed in this war comes from military experts, but I am not one. I just want to be clear on that. And I can only tell you what's actually happening on the ground, really. But this is a question worth talking about. Do you believe they will be safe going down without good air defense? How to get this air defense? Now, what I assume you mean is air support spear point, right? Am I right about that? What you really mean is air support. They don't have air support for the infantry that are trying to make this push. Um, and they are not safe without it. That's why they're taking casualties, man. Right? That's why that Russian Ka-52 helicopter that defected the other day is such a win. Now the Ukrainians have a Ka-52 gunship and a pilot to fly it against the Russians. That's a great win right there. There's a question from Gary. Are all of the reserves currently engaged? And you're talking about the new recruits, the reserves that are supplied with NATO armaments and weapons and equipment. My understanding is that they are not, that there are still about 30% of those reserves yet to be put in the fight. And new recruits that have been training out in NATO countries come home every day. Every day. They started the offensive when 63,000 of them returned to in country, came back in country from their NATO training, but more keep coming back every day. And yeah. And while hey Cyberdoc, how you doing, pal? I like this guy. If you don't check out Cyberdoc, check him out. Stingers and manpads can only do too much. You need yeah, you need layered defense. And the Ukrainians are doing from guys, from everything that I can see, the Ukrainians are doing have been doing so much with so little for so long. They are now qualified to do just about anything with nothing. And they deserve some support, I'll tell you. Mr. Kennedy, how do you do? Air alert in Dnipro right now. Kyiv is under air alert right now. Let's see. Good. Questions, comments, points of observation, or personal need? Anything from anybody? Um, I love the support, you guys. I really appreciate it. I really, if anybody here can join my Patreon, I really need to get some Patreon guys over there. I need some more support on Patreon. Sapper training in Spain completed. That's urban warfare. Guys on the ready. Where'd you hear that, or what's your source for that? I didn't see that at all. Scotty Guitar. Where'd you see that Sapper training in Spain completed? So, Magic, are radar systems and important systems like that protected from infantry? Apparently not, because we saw the landing of those special forces troops take out those installations yesterday, right? So those were guys on the ground. I am in Kyiv. Yes, I am. Thank you, Spear Point. Spear Point, if you can, join my Patreon. That's at patreon.com/Peter Alexievich. Hey, guitar guy, do you recognize my patronymic? Right? Do you know where the only country in the world where you find that as a last name, as a surname? Alexievich. Do you recognize it? Who's an Eastern European specialist here? We're all hoping that the Ukrainians get their territory back. Ugh. Is equipment attrition at a critical level for the Russians? If so, which kinds? That is from Jerry Jaskovich. Now, Jerry, this is my understanding on equipment attrition, and it's a great question, pal. We know that the Russians inherited a wealth of equipment from the Soviets, right? Like just stockpiles built for an inevitable war against the West, right? So the Russians came into this fight with masses of superiority in both artillery and tanks and men. The Ukrainian people seem to have responded and closed the gap with men right away, with warm bodies, right? It has taken 18 months of brutal combat. But today, I can say with confidence that in country, the Ukrainians have superiority of both tanks and artillery pieces, thanks to support from NATO partners and the precision strikes that the Ukrainians have engaged in going after the Russian artillery pieces. That's why the Russian telegram channels are lit up calling for counter battery fire that never comes, because you look at the numbers, the trends of how the Ukrainians have been targeting uh, aircraft. Oh, I wish you could see this. I just got an air raid alert coming to my phone. The sirens are going off again outside too. I can hear them through the door. Um, we knew that that was going to be the case today. We knew it was going to be the case because yesterday was Independence Day. Um, so anyway, hang on. Okay. Um, so that's a great question, Jerry, and I hope that that answers the question. The actual numbers, the last I saw looked something like, if I'm not mistaken, uh, the estimates were something like Ukraine is currently in possession of 1,500 tanks, while the Russian forces are down to 1,400. And it's important to recognize the difference in those tank types. The Western tanks are much more survivable for the crews. And so when the crews get hit in a leopard, they don't tend to be unalived, right? And that's not going to be the case for these T10s that they're unloading today. I swear to God, this is true. We have video evidence of the Russians unloading T10s. These went into production in 1953. Now, they can't possibly, my understanding is they can't possibly be going to use them as tanks. They're going to use them as shitty artillery pieces to close the gap with all the artillery that they've lost, is what it appears to be. Who do you see standing at the end of the war, Russia or Ukraine? Well, if I didn't think that Ukraine would be standing at the end of the war, I would not have dragged my sorry fat old ass to Kiev. I'll tell you right now, I would have stayed on the beach in Oceanside, California, uh, or at the place in Erie, looking at Lake Erie, which I love. I do love the lake. Um, Someplace where everybody spoke English, and I felt didn't feel like a foreigner. The Wagner Group threatens Putin. What do you think? I don't think that the Wagner Group is any longer significant. I really don't. I mean, there may be element. Well, wait, I shouldn't say that. Not the armed forces of the Wagner Group, because it's important to recognize that the Wagner Group is an insidious, multi armed international syndicate that does all kinds of things. It launders money, it runs gold mines, it runs diamond mines, it does timbering, it rigs elections, right? Does internet disinformation campaigns. And then there's the armed part of the Wagner Group. This is my understanding of this organization. The armed part is going to be folded into the Russian military. Some of the folks will undoubtedly go to work for other private military companies. Some of the folks may defect and join the RDK, right, the Russian Freedom Corps, and maybe actually attack Moscow. But it is clearly splintered. 8,000 troops, Wagner troops. Now, look at when the mutiny happened, he still had 24,000 troops under his command. After the mutiny, only 8,000 went to Belarus and 1,500 commanders, less than 10,000. It's being reported now that there are fewer than 5,000 still remaining. And that apparently includes the commanders. That means half of them have left Belarus already. So it's hard to know uh, what the next step is. Navalny is just not Putin. That's a great question. Navalny is just not Putin. He's still in favor of Crimea being Russian. He's no friend of Ukraine. He's no friend of democracy. He's just not Putin. Good. What else? Um, for the guys on YouTube, I'm gonna end the YouTube stream now, and we're just gonna take it on TikTok. So if you'd care to join us on TikTok, join us over on TikTok there. And we're gonna go into a less formal kind of discussion here. So YouTube guys, thank you so much for hanging out all this time. I sure do appreciate it. Please, if you can, join my Patreon. Make it a great day.